to haze, to intimidate, and to embarrass their peers. This is nothing new, unfortunately. But lately, the intimidation has become more and more physical, and in some cases, even deadly. People are getting hurt. Our kids are being hurt. We need to start having this conversation. Psychotherapist and HLN contributor Dr. Tiffany Davis Henry is here. And all right, Dr. Tiff, we talked about hazing. We talked about how we felt this was beyond hazing. What's the difference between teasing, bullying, and hazing?
Well, I think Coy brought up a really good point in the last segment. We've all been teased. Teasing is something, the nanny boo-boos, the pulling of the hair, all of that stuff that's pretty normal in childhood. I know I was teased like nobody's business from my brother, but hazing is something a little bit different. There's that mental intimidation. There's the physical and the violent behaviors that go on, making you feel like you can't be included in whatever sport or activity it might be because you know, you have to go through this process. Hazing tends to be more ritualistic. It's more of a rite of passage where it was done to me, so we're going to do it to you. And then once you go through this, once you go through the burning sands, then you'll get to do this to the next people that are coming in.
So you and I were on Raising America earlier today, and we talked, and Kira Phillips was talking to one of the administrators who said, nothing like this has ever happened. But you mentioned the word ritualistic. It makes me think that could this have been something that was part of a pattern? I'm not saying we don't know for sure.
Saying that,
I just want to put that
we
out
definitely have that question because what we know is there was some sort of agreement, some anti-hazing agreement that all of the kids had to sign. And you know as well as I have, I've worked in different types of facilities, different organizations. When something happens, then that policy and procedure manual gets whipped out and we start having these new policies and everybody has to sign it. Usually those types of things are handed out after something happens. So I wouldn't be surprised if there was some type of hazing ritual that they may have known something about and then had everybody sign it as the years went on.
So in sports, you know, and maybe, I mean, because obviously, why would they hand something out? Maybe that's part of the theory. Now, you say that in sports, there's this culture of acceptance. Tell us what you mean by that.
Well, I think it goes back to the ritual. And you talked about this too, that with football and different sports, things just happen, and it's been normalized by everyone in the culture. So it's normal to have someone carry the pads and everything. It's normal to maybe have someone sit in an ice bath. It's normal to do this. And I think that in this case, maybe there was some hazing that was just friendly, ritualistic. We've all done it. Very, very harmless stuff that maybe the coaches and the adults around knew about, but maybe there were some things that were off that list, off the grid, that adults didn't know about that was still going on. And because some of the hazing was acceptable by the adults, perhaps the stuff that wasn't necessarily acceptable was never told to them and they didn't know.
That's an interesting point. I want to bring back in Coy Wire. Coy, have you ever, in all of your years of playing sports, had something like that veers into the area of violent hazing or hazing against somebody's will that coaches or parents knew about but said, hey, this is part of what you do to be on this team. You're tough. And, you know how to take that. Have
in
you
all
seen
of my
any
years,
of that?
from middle school, junior high, high school, college, and pro, never anything that went across the line. But I will say this, that in the NFL, 2 coaches that I played for, 2 head coaches, squashed hazing completely. They didn't want any of it to happen on their team because as harmless as it may seem, they know that hazing, teasing, can emotionally affect somebody. And the coach said, look, we need everyone to play at their best, to be mentally at their best if we want to win football games, so we're not going to haze anyone. Treat them like your family. So that's an interesting note, that at the professional level, there are head coaches who have cut it out.
And it's important. I'm glad you're here to talk about that because there's a lot of kids out there that want to be athletes. They might think, hey, it's necessary to go through these rituals in order to be a pro athlete. You say that's not the case. You didn't have to do it, and that's not what other kids have to do. But I have another question for you, Dr. Tiff, because we see these things happen, and they seem to happen in groups. 3 kids here. Other places, you got 2 kids. It never really seems to be one. Is there some sort of, as Coy mentioned earlier, a pack mentality that goes into this that emboldens kids to say, hey, I could do something violent because I got my boys with me?
Well, I think there's no value in doing these types of things if somebody else doesn't know about it. It doesn't elevate my status. It doesn't make me the big dude in a big fish in a small pond if nobody else knows about it. We're all just fish if that's the case.
It's an ego trip for them.
Yeah, for
Real quick, I have a couple seconds left. What can parents do?
Well, certainly if you see any unexplained injuries, obviously you're going to have injuries in tough sports like football and soccer, rugby, any of those types of things. But any unexplained injuries are key for you to look out for. You also want to notice any with secretive, withdrawn behaviors, and certainly if it's a sport or an activity that they absolutely love but hate going, you want to look at that and figure out what's going on within the group dynamics, whether it's the coaching, whether it's the friendships, whatever it is, something's going on there that's not quite right. Smell it out, sniff it out, figure it out for parents.
Great point, great discussion. Dr. Tiff Coy-Wire, thank you so much. All right, folks, a well-respected